Hi, my name is Jasmine, and this is Nishia. Today, we're here to identify the impact of landmark United States Supreme Court cases of constitutional interpretation. The first court case that we're going to talk about today is Marbury v. Madison. Before Jefferson's inauguration, outgoing President Adams quickly appointed 58 members of his own party, including William Marbury, to fill government posts created by the Federalist majority Congress. Marbury argued that the Supreme Court ruled that he did have a right to receive his commission. The court ruled that Section 13 of the Judiciary Act, extending the court jurisdiction to cases involving writs of mandamus, was unconstitutional. Judicial review was first used during this case with John Marshall, and it opened up a whole new power for the judicial branch. The decision of this court case was decided in 1803.
Wallace v. Jeffrey. This ruling declared that a state law authorizing a moment of silence for the prayer violated for the First Amendment's establishment cause. A parent of 3 enrolled the children at a school in Mobile, Alabama, sued the state, complaining that the law amounted to forcing prayer upon the students. The Alabama law was unconstitutional. The courts ruled in the favor of Jeffrey. The court ruled 6-3 and wrote that even the prayer was considered voluntary. The state statute was designed to endorse religion and not motivated by any clear secular purpose. This decision was made in 1985.
The ninth court case is Wyatt v. Stinkney. This lawsuit was filed October 23, 1970, which involved Ricky Wyatt, a resident at Bryce Hospital in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. This was the longest-running court case ever. This fell under the 14th Amendment, which involves the states can't deny the right of a person to the right of life, liberty, and property. It didn't end until 2003 when the courts made their decision. A federal court in Alabama held for the first time that people who are involuntarily committed to state institutions because of mental illness or development disabilities have a constitutional right to treatment that will afford them a realistic opportunity to return to society. This court case led to improved conditions for patients in state-run psychiatric facilities around the country. Most people who went to Bryce Hospital were never seen again, and the people that died there were buried behind the hospital.
Powell v. Alabama. 9 African American youths were accused of raping 2 women on a train passing through Alabama. All 9 were quickly tried, found guilty, and sentenced to death. The court ruled that the men were denied their right to due process because they weren't given a reasonable amount of time with their attorneys in order to build an adequate defense to the charges against them. The right to legal counsel in a capital case was guaranteed by the court's ruling in this case. This court was come to a decision in 1932.
All these court cases have a certain impact on life and the rules that we go by today. They basically come from certain amendments like the right to a fair trial, the right to a speedy trial, and also the right to life, liberty, and property. Thank you.
This next court case is Miranda v. Arizona. Ernesto Miranda's right had been violated and struck down by his conviction. After he appealed his conviction, the police acknowledged that they had never told Miranda he had the right to consult with an attorney before or during questioning. Courts must balance the rights of society to be protected from criminals. The Supreme Court ruled in the favor of Miranda. This case protects the rights of criminal suspects during police interrogation. Suspects in police custody must be informed of their rights before questioning. The decision was finalized in 1966.
The third court case is Tinker v. Des Moines. This ruling established the extent to which public school students can take part in political protests in their schools. The question the case raises whether, under the First Amendment, school officials can prohibit students from wearing armbands to symbolize political protests. There were high school and junior high school students in Des Moines, Iowa. They decided to wear black armbands to protest the Vietnam War. 2 days before the protest, the school board created a new policy that students who wore an armband to school and refused to remove it would be suspended. Mary Beth Tinker and John Tinker felt like their freedom of speech had been violated. The Supreme Court agreed with the students. School officials did have the right to set rules, but their rules must be consistent with the First Amendment. This decision was made in 1963.
Gideon v. Wainwright. The court considered whether the right to counsel was necessarily to guarantee a defendant's liberty and ensure equality under the law. Gideon smashed cigarette machines and a jukebox, stealing money from both machines, found guilty and sentenced to 5 years in the state penitentiary. Without a lawyer, Gideon had been unfairly deprived of life, liberty, and property. The ruling was overturned March 18, 1963 in Gideon's favor. The court held the right to counsel was essential to a fair trial.
This fifth court case was Reno v. American Civil Liberties Union. The First Amendment protections similar to those granted to the press were extended to the Internet as a result of this case. Protect minors from obscene or indecent material on the Internet. Courts declared that the act was unconstitutional because of too broad in its restrictions. Courts also ruled that the law didn't clearly define indecent material and limit its restrictions, so they didn't apply to adults. The court ruled that the types of government regulations placed on broadcast media don't apply to the internet. The decision was finalized in 1997.
United States versus Nixon. Nixon helped plan and cover up an illegal break-in at the Democratic Party campaign headquarters at the Watergate Hotel in Washington, D.C. Nixon's special prosecutor subpoenaed Nixon to force over the tape recordings, but he refuses. This court case really questioned if the president really has the right to withhold information from the courts because it's nowhere mentioned in the Constitution. The court's decision ruled in the favor of the United States was a constitutional landmark. The president can't hide any kind of evidence, and this court case will always be remembered as the Watergate scandal. Decision made in 1974.
The seventh court case was McCullough v. Maryland. When the Maryland branch of the National Bank refused to pay the tax, the state of Maryland sued the National Bank's cashier, James McCullough. Chief Justice John Marshall argued that Maryland couldn't tax the bank because the power to tax involves the power to destroy. If states could tax a national institution, then they could weaken or destroy it. This, Marshall asserted, violated the supremacy clause of the Constitution. The court ruled in favor of the bank. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution gave Congress the power to make all laws necessary and proper for carrying out its responsibilities, such as regulating commerce. The decision was made in 1819.